It's that time of the week again. Yes, hello and welcome to the Next Gen Racing YouTube channel for our weekend preview. Looking ahead to an action-packed weekend, we've got action this side of the Irish Sea and over the other side with the Guineas taking place along with the Tattersalls Gold Cup over there at the Curragh. Jack, it's a big weekend. I mean, we're actually filming this on a Friday. Goodwood's got a two-day meeting. You've got the Cocked Hat and Height of Fashion today. The sun is out and the flat is well and truly into gear, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, yeah, the sun's out all over the country. It seems like the ground's now firming up somewhat. So, yeah, hopefully we can pick a couple of winners today.
Yeah, we're getting that ground that we're all hoping to have for the flat season. We're going to be covering two races from Haydock, one from Goodwood on Saturday, one from the Curragh, which will be the 2000 Guineas on Saturday, and then the two Group 1s on the Sunday at the Curragh. A lot of horses we're going to be putting lines through potentially their previous runs today. There's going to be quite a few of those, but we start off in the 3 o'clock at Haydock, which is the Sandy Lane Stakes. It's over 6 furlongs, and for the 3-year-olds. And Little Big Bear has been well back since Frankie Dettori's been jocked up for Aidan O'Brien. 7-4 favourite. Bradsell 7-2. Cold Case is 5-1. Al Dassim, horse that I really liked over in Maidan, 15-2. 8-1 about Matilda Picot, and then double figures about the other three in here. Jack, I mentioned there about horses that, we're going to be putting lines through. The two in the Guineas for Aidan O'Brien. We'll be discussing August Road Down next weekend, but this weekend it's all about Little Big Bear. Do we put a line through that last in the Guineas?
I mean, no, I don't think I could personally forgive him. We know how much you have to do to train on from 2 to 3, and you just didn't really show like he had at all. I mean, I know the race went badly for him. It was on ground that he didn't like. He is a sprinter as well. So, yeah, I get the case why people could put a line through him, but I wouldn't be backing him at 13-8, 7-4. I think this is probably a bit of a watching brief. You got the two from Ascot in there, Bradsell and Cold Case. Wouldn't be surprised if Bradsell was actually the one to reverse that form. I thought it was a decent little prep race there, nice little season opener. Like Ascot when he finished third. Of course, he absolutely hacked up in the Coventry on only his second run last year, and that wasn't a bad Coventry with Persian Force back in second. Of course, at the Curragh, he hung right and kind of blew his chances away there when he was actually beaten by Little Big Bear in the Phoenix Stakes. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him bounce back at around 7-2. I'd be going with Bradsell.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said there with regards to Bradsell potentially reversing that form. I thought Bradsell definitely looked like he needed the run that day at Ascot, and I think he'll come on plenty for that. I mean, it wouldn't be a race that I'd like to have a bet in. I would like to hope Little Big Bear is better than, what he's shown in the Guineas. I mean, what he did last year in the Phoenix was absolutely incredible, and what he was doing over 6 furlongs was special, and he looked top class, didn't he? It's just whether he can kind of recreate that, coming back onto quicker going that he's going to love, and obviously, look, he's an Ascot winner. This is one of the best preps that you can get for a Commonwealth Cup, so we know that whoever wins this is going to go on to the Commonwealth Cup, and I think Little Big Bear can do it. It's not going to be a bet for me, but I'm looking forward to seeing him back out. But Jack's going to be with Bradsell in Sandy Lane, and I'm going to be with Little Big Bear. Let's move on to the 3:30 at Haydock then, which is the 5 furlong Temple Stakes. This is a Group 2, and the Platinum Queen changing yards to the Roger Varian yard, 7-2 favourite. Dramatises 11-2. Twilight Calls also 11-2. Royal Claim is 13-2. Living the Dream 9-1, double figures. About the rest of the field in here. I saw the Platinum Queen, Jack, on Monday at around 11-8 with some bookmakers. I mean, they probably now got the price fair at 7-2. I mean, she was an absolute star. I mean, things didn't obviously go well when heading over to the US, but you can put lines through those runs as well. But this horse here was very good at 2. We know that, and was competing in open company at 2. Roger Varian now training this horse. What do we make of this? I mean, Holly Dore hasn't actually sat on this horse at Roger Varian's yard yet, but we know she gets along with him very well.
Yeah, it's very tricky. It's a very tricky one, isn't it? Because again, having to train on from 2 to 3, she is getting a lot of weight. Of course, she has to take a little penalty as well, dramatised as well, gets a lot of weight from Twilight Calls and her elders. But there's something about these 3-year-olds going into open company. I know she did it last year, but she's still got a big task on seasonal reappearance. And I think she's probably a fair enough price. Little bit of a question to answer with the changing yard, the new owners off a season break as well. Twilight Calls was very lightly raced last year. Of course, showed no run whatsoever in the Palace House Stakes. I think the Palace House Stakes is usually a good piece of form to look at for this. I think 5 of the last 11 winners came from there. 1-1. I think the other 4 placed. And in that regard, of course, it didn't run was Royal Claim, who kind of has to bounce back, who looked very impressive as a filly last year as a 3-year-old, kind of lost her way on the last 2 runs somewhat. But Living the Dream I quite like from stall 14, who was second last time out at Newmarket. I think a lot of people have in their head that he's actually a like prefers soft ground, which is fair enough because I mean the ground was pretty testing at Newmarket when he was second last time out, but he's just been progressing and progressing. I think, of course, at Pontefract on his penultimate one, he beat Arecibo in decent style. He's now up to a mark of 109. And obviously, as a 4-year-old, he does have to give weight away to the fillies as well and the 3-year-old. So he has a little bit to prove somewhat, but I think it's a little bit of a messy race, and he's nearly a double figure price at 9-1. He is progressing. He's only a 4-year-old. Wouldn't be surprised to see him take a step forward. He bolted up on decent ground at Sandown last year, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him take another step forward. So at 9-1, living the dreams where I'm at.
Living the dream, 9-1. Jack, I'm going to go with a horse that you mentioned there, who was very good for its Royal Acclaim. I think this combination of James Tate and Neil Callan has gone very, very well since the start of the season, but this horse won on quick going in the City Wall Stake at York before ending up finishing 6th in the Numthorpe Stakes, and I do think this horse can take a massive step forward this season. There's definitely talent there. I think 13-2 is more than a fair enough each way price, and like I say, this combination of Tate and Callan is going really well. I think the Platinum Queen, look, she is a very special filly, and you know she could come out and just be top class at 3 and be even better. But I'm going to have to be taking her on. I just think there's horses in here that could potentially also show improvement and just be that little bit better. So living the dream for Jack, 9-1, and I'm going to be with Royal Acclaim. Let's go over to our beloved Goodwood then, Jack, for the one race we're going to be covering, the 1:30 there. It's the opening race in the card on Saturday, over a mile, 2 furlongs. It's the William Hill Festival Stakes, a listed contest, and Francesco Clemente, 7-4 favourite, Phantom Flight 9-2, King of Conquest 11-2, El Drama 6-1, Epic Poet is 9-1, Jack Darcy 14-1, Imperial Fight to the outside of the lot at 22-1. This horse here, Francesco Clemente, I love an unbeaten horse. Everyone does. We all want to see horses stay unbeaten. There's every chance this horse could be much better than listed level, go on from this and then head into something like a Group 3 or a Group 2 straight after. I think the one for the same owners, though, Jack, is very interesting in here, which is Epic Poet, who's having the first run for Freddie and Martin Mead. This horse formerly trained in France. And looking at the form figures, you can see very consistent in terms of placing, but struggled to get a win on the board. Very unknown horse. You don't know what Freddie and Martin Mead are going to get out of this horse, bring it over to the UK. Sometimes it can work, sometimes it can't. I'm not going to mention Darkness at any time soon. But I think Epic Poet could be a fascinating run. I think Francesco Clemente is the one to beat, Jack. We know that. I think definitely the one to beat. But I may, on the day, just have a small... You're only going to get 2 places by looks here, but there may... I mentioned it last week, there will be bookmakers possibly offering 3 places in here. I may have a small each way go on Epic Poet with the informed Tom Marquand on board. Yourself, Jack, are you going to be with the favourite?
I think Francesco Clemente is definitely the one to beat. Has a little bit to prove after such a long break, but of course Unexposed could take a big step forward. I'm surprised El Drama's as big as 6-1. Last 3 times he's been seen in Group 1 company. I mean, he was by no means disgraceful. He was 5th in the on Champions Day in the QE2 behind Bayside Boy and Modern Games. I thought he ran a decent race that day, then finished second out in Meydan over a mile and a furlong, and then of course disappointed in the Dubai Turf last time out. Not sure a mile and a quarter is actually his cup of tea. I know he won the D Stakes beating the mighty Maximal back in the day, but look, I'm not sure a mile and a quarter is actually his cup of tea. He's probably actually slightly better over a mile, but I mean, he's a half brother to volume. He won from a mile to a mile and a quarter, so I think a mile and a quarter is almost to the maximum of his capabilities. If they go quick out front, I think it's his stamina test probably won't suit him, but he's 6-1, and I think without Francesco Clemente, I'm not sure what price that is, but that's kind of the avenue that I'd be looking down. He's actually joint top rated with Francesco Clemente. He doesn't have to give away a penalty or whatsoever, and he's still 6-1.
Okay, yeah, El Drama, potentially a bet without the favourite for Jack in that race. Very excited to see how good Francesco Clemente could potentially be. And like I say, everybody loves an unbeaten horse. Let's go over the Irish Sea then for the one race from the Curragh we cover on Saturday, which is the 3:40. It's the Irish Tattersalls 2,000 guineas, a Group 1 there. And Royal Scotsman, 2-1 favourite. High Royal is 9-2. Paddington, 5-1. Proud and Regal, 13-2. Cairo and Galera on a 12-1 and 16-1, and bigger about the rest of the field. I've got one question for you, Jack. I'll be intrigued to know your opinion, but Royal Scotsman, do you think in the 2,000 guineas over here, that not the best horse, the best miler won that race, or do you think Royal Scotsman could potentially prove to be the best miler from the 2,000 guineas?
Yeah, I think so. I think Chaldean won it in a very stamina-laden 2,000 guineas, as we've mentioned before. I don't think it's going to be a bad piece of form. But I think the winners are going to kind of come from down the field, and it's not necessarily going to be in the order in which they finished that kind of satisfies who's actually the best horse in the race, especially over a mile. Royal Scotsman, I was very tentative that he was going to get the mile on soft ground, but he completely proved me wrong. I think he does have a great chance here. I think he's definitely a worthy favourite. I think 2-1's a fair enough price. You got the O'Brien lot who could also take a step forward, the likes of Paddington, Proud and Regal, and even Cairo. Galeron's still 12-1 though, which is interesting. I don't think he's going to actually appreciate the quicker ground. But I remember on his debut last year, actually, when he was behind Royal Scotsman, funnily enough, in that unbelievable looking novice with Mischief Magic in behind, and went down to the parade ring as a 2-year-old, and he absolutely dwarfed them all. I was thinking, goodness me, when he steps up in trip, he's going to be some animal as a 2-year-old. Stepped up, of course, won over at this course last year over 7 furlongs on soft ground, but ran a great race into 4th in the 2000 Guineas, staying on at the line. I mean, if it does turn into a bit of a stamina test at the car, I think Galeron's a valuable each way price. I know the O'Brien lot are going to be over there, but they're always a point or two shorter than those really should be. And even if you do find the winner, I never usually think the O'Brien lot are going to be value on the day. So Galeron for me is 12-1. Colin Keane's in the saddle as well. I think that's a brilliant jockey appointment there. Kieran Schumacher gave him a good ride at Newmarket. But I think for me, I do think Royal Scotsman's the one to beat. But Galeron at each 12-1 and each way price is kind of where I'll be looking.
Yeah, no, really fair that Galeron, like I said, Colin Keane, he is mustard at the Curragh. I think 12-1. I agree with Jack, could be a fairly big each way price. I'm not sure about High Royal. I mean, I'd like to see this horse back it up, but whether that was kind of like a shock run and whether he can reproduce that, I don't know. Possibly a horse that just loved the soft going on 2000 Guineas Day. And again, it was a messy race. And we've mentioned before, Jack, that all the 2000 Guineas, we've had the English and the French, they've been a little bit disappointing compared to what the fillies have produced. You know, the likes of Tahira, Morge and Blue Rose Sen, you'd have them well over kind of the likes of Chaldean and Mojave Yesanafi and horses like that. But I do think that Royal Scotsman could be the top class miler as a 3-year-old and the one that, you know, will turn up in your big races and end up in stuff like the Sussex Stakes down the line. And I'm very excited to see him. I think Jamie Spencer, we've seen what he can do at the Curragh. A very relaxed jockey, or he's a relaxed jockey anyway, but especially at the Curragh, I think he'll hold on to this horse as long as possible. And I can see him going and win this. I don't think 2-1 is actually the worst price in the world. I thought he'd be a lot shorter than this. I thought he could be about 6-4, maybe even money. Like I said, I'm not a massive fan of High Royal. Paddington's interesting. I thought they'd actually be sending this horse and stepping up in trip already and potentially going out for the Jockey Club next week, but they've decided against it. I don't know what the plan is for Victoria Road. Haven't heard anything on that horse as of yet, but I knew that was going to be the plan. Proud and Regal, Donegal O'Brien, sometimes with Donegal horses, they can take a massive step forward from their first run. I would not be surprised to see this horse run well. I'm going to stick with Royal Scotsman, Jack, but I do think that you've made a great case for Galeron. I think it's actually a very good case and maybe one of the better each way bets in the field. So Jack and I are both in agreement that Royal Scotsman looks the one to beat, but Jack's going to have an each way play with Galeron in the Irish 2000 Guineas. Let's move over to Sunday then. The 2:45 is the Tattersall's Gold Cup. This over a mile and quarter, Group 1 contest. And at the moment, for some reason, I don't have Verdani in the betting, which is a bit frustrating. But how I read it at the moment is Baybridge is 7-4, Luxembourg 3-1, and Matt 5-1, Point Lonsdale 12-1, Buckaroo 14-1, and 16-1 Bar. But I'd imagine Verdani should be the 6-4 favourite in here, Jack.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, he'll probably go for 11-8 and Baybridge 6-4. I imagine he's 7-4 on the day. But at the moment, he's not in the betting. It's very confusing. Of course, declaration will be coming out today. But the matchup should be happening. Baybridge versus Verdani. And I think Verdani's just the better horse over a mile and a quarter. I think he is the good ground. I don't think it's going to suit Baybridge, especially if it turns into a bit of a turn of foot contest. I think speed contest. I think Baybridge is a very good galloper over a mile and a half. Prefers a bit of give in the ground, but I think Verdani, it was a nice little prep run, a long shot last time out. Of course, all roads are probably going to lead to the Arc for him as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if he goes and wins this and then goes and wins the Coral Eclipse. I think he's absolutely quality. He just oozes class for me over a mile and a quarter, and I think Verdani is just clearly the one to beat. It's a shame that I'm not backing Baybridge because I love him with all my heart, but I know it's hard for me to say it, but I think perhaps his targets at the end of the season are going to be kind of where he's going to show his best. That's what usually happens anyway. It seems like you look at the Prince of Wales. I still don't know how State of Rest actually got the better of him that day, but I think perhaps in the autumn he's going to look for his assignments then, and hopefully Verdani will be able to take this.
Yeah, I mean, we know you have a big love for Bay Bridge, and one thing I want to say is that we had the Brigadier Gerard last night where we saw Huckham and Desert Crown go at it, and Desert Crown unfortunately disappoint into second, although they did run a mighty race. What in a race like this, we've got Bay Bridge in there, we've got Verdani in there. Say both of those horses turned up in this race here. I mean, it'd be a hell of a race, don't get me wrong, but where would you have those two in the betting? In terms of what the field, you said Verdani's probably the top class one over Oman 2. Would you still have him as the favourite over those two?
Over Desert Crown.
Yeah, and Huckham.
Yeah, I think
You
so.
would.
Obviously, it massively depend on what he does here, but I think he's just a perfect mile and a quarter. Of course, you got Adayar as well. We saw drop back to a mile and a quarter and got the better of Van Mat, so you'd have to throw him into the equation. But if they're all going over a mile and a quarter, I think it'd probably be between Adayar and Verdani to me. But Verdani just screams out like a proper mile and a quarter horse rather than trying to be stupid and stop dropping back to a mile, which I don't think will ever happen, or stepping up to a mile and a half.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think Verdani, like that pre-Gannet run, Christophe Simeon said before, I don't know how this horse went off as short as it did, because he said before, this is just a prep for the start of the season. Like, we're not going to have him fully wound up at all. End up finishing fourth in that Gannet, and I thought that was like, you can sometimes watch horses and go, that's a perfect prep. Like, you can see it, and it just felt like that to me. Now, from what I heard from Christophe Simeon, the plan isn't to go back to the Coral Eclipse. The plan is actually go to the Prince of Wales's after this. So I don't know whether that is actually going to happen. I mean, you could obviously do both. You've got one in kind of mid-June, and I think you've got a couple of weeks until the eclipse. So you can do both. But I think they want to go to Royal Ascot with this horse. I do think he's very ground versatile. I mean, we saw what he did in the Arc, finishing second last year on heavy ground, but we have also seen him win on good ground. So I don't think the ground's going to be any question mark. Jean-Claude Rouget's in very good form over in France as well. So look, I don't know what price, because for some reason I don't have a price here, but I think it could be 6-4, but I actually think 6-4 may end up being a little bit of value on the day. So Verdani for myself and Jack in the Tattersalls Irish Gold Cup. Let's go on to the fillies now for the 1,000 guineas. The Irish 1,000 guineas over a mile at 350 there at the Curragh. Tahira is the 4-7 favourite. Meditate 7-1 along with Never Ending Story. Jackie O is the fascinating one that Aidan O'Brien's thrown in the mix at 10-1. Tarawa is 12-1 for Dermot World. Same connections, very similar names. 16-1 about Eternal Silence. 25-1 about the rest of the field. We mentioned I mentioned a minute ago about Morge and Blue Rose Sen and Tahira being the top class fillies, and well, World said, Jack, that this horse again wasn't going to be sort of fully wound up. They don't think she's fully ready, but do you think she's going to be ready now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of people have said about the ground. Of course, she's a half sister to Tanawa, who won out in the Breeders' Cup, was as versatile as anything on any ground. I think it's just the fact that the three races she's ran in, it's just coincidence she hasn't actually had better ground to go out. But no, I think I've really tried to take her on with something here, and I just can't. I really just can't. Meditate, of course, will prefer the better ground, but she's just not as good a filly as Tahira. Tahira is, I think, probably, I mean, rating suggests £5. I think she's probably £10 better than her. I was looking through for one of the O'Brien's second string, third strings, looking at Jackie O, of course. Is Tarawa going to cause a little upset? I doubt. I don't know if they're going to run them both together. But no, I just actually couldn't come up with anything. I think Tahira is a top-class filly. I think she's just going to win. I'm not going to be having a bet. I think 2-1 odds are 8-50, or sorry, 4-7. She is obviously a very short price. It's not kind of the prices that I like to be taking. But I do actually think she's just too good. Unfortunately, I won't be able to add too much more insight there. I just can't take her on.
Yeah, it's not easy to, is it? And you mentioned Meditate, look, enjoying better ground, but again, a bit like August Rodin and Little Big Bear mentioned earlier, you're going to put a line through that run on soft ground at Newmarket, and you never know what she could come out. She may be even better as a free roll. We just don't know, and she could again take a massive step forward from the 1,000 guineas. But again, if Tahira wasn't fully wound up for that, 1,000 guineas at Newmarket, she could be even better now and show a lot of improvement. I love throwing little questions to you, Jack, today, but a rematch Morge versus Tahira on let's say, good ground, would you see the form reversed?
Probably, but at the same time, Tahira would probably be, if it was a match-up, I imagine Tahira would probably be 7-4 on and Morge 6-4. So probably at the prices, I'd actually rather take Morge, but I think Tahira is probably the one to beat.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens after the Irish Guineas, whether they're both going to turn up at Royal Ascot together and take each other on over a mile. That would be fascinating. We'd all love to see that matchup once again. So there's our main race previews. Jack, anything else this weekend, or are you just sticking to the main action that we've covered?
Just sticking to the main action this weekend, nothing else of yet.
fine. We'll get your best bet in a minute. I have got one in the 3:15 at York on Saturday. It's the Bronte Cup Filly Stakes over a mile 6 furlongs, and I like a horse at a fair price here, 16-1, and it's Voodoo Queen for the Roger Varian yard. Andrea Razzini takes the ride. This horse actually ran at Goodwood at the start of the season, finishing 5th in what looks possibly a weak race, but over a trip that I think could be inadequate for this horse. They're stepping this horse up for the first time to a mile 6, and one thing about this horse, I think this horse could really appreciate good ground, and I think 16-1 against Mimikyu, who could be a very talented filly, but I've just got a feeling that, you know, she could end up needing the run here, and I think 16-1 each way about a horse who should take on breeding, take a massive step forward, stepping up in trip to a mile 6. I think 16-1 about Voodoo Queen in the Bronte Cup Filly Stakes at York, and the 3:15 could be very big. Jack, a best bet from you for the weekend?
I can't see Verdani being beaten in the Tattersalls Gold Cup.
Oh, it's a short price. I don't mind a short price, but I don't like putting a short price up together, so I feel like I've got to go elsewhere. Oh, God, I'll go elsewhere with a short price. I'll go with Royal Scotsman to win the Irish 2000 Guineas at 2-1. I don't think it's a bad price at all. I think there's a little bit of value in that, to be honest. And I think he could be the top class three-year-old miler for the Colts this season. So there we go. There's our best bets on screen now. You can have a look at those. That's who we'll be backing this weekend. Plenty of action. We've got a bank holiday weekend. I'm going to be up at Goodwood for a couple of days. Jack and I will be up at Goodwood very shortly, actually heading up there for their Friday meeting. But we will be back next weekend, probably at the earlier time, probably on Thursday evening, I'd imagine. And I will hopefully be recording live from Chantilly, where we've got the Prix de Jockey Club happening there. But obviously we have the Oaks and the Derby happening over here. So Jack will be keeping all eyes on things over in England, and I'll be keeping all eyes on everything over in France. As always, do hit that subscribe button. It's free to do. It's so easy to do. Just click that button down below if you are enjoying the content. It takes 5 seconds, and we appreciate all the bit of support. Like, comment, get those comments in. Let us know your naps. We will read out any winning naps next weekend for the preview. And look, enjoy the bank holiday weekend. The sun's out. Gamble responsibly, and we will see you next weekend.